My mother-in-law raised her hand and slapped me right there inside the courtroom. Everyone froze. She had been torturing me for months, calling me their servant in front of everyone. But when the judge walked in and saw what happened, her smirk disappeared. Because that judge was my father. Hey everyone, I'm Naomi, and today I'm sharing the most shocking day of my life, the day my in-laws' cruelty finally caught up with them. If you love real justice stories, hit that like button right now and subscribe because this story has more twists than you can imagine. Trust me, you need to hear this till the end. Let me take you back to where my nightmare began. You know, there was a time when I believed in fairy tales, when I thought love could conquer anything. I was working at a luxury car showroom in the city, and honestly, I loved my job. Sure, it wasn't glamorous by some people's standards, but I was good at what I did. I understood cars, I understood people, and I made decent money. My life was simple, but it was mine. I had built it from nothing after losing contact with my father 6 years ago. It's a long story, but let's just say life took us in different directions, and I thought he had moved on without me. So I learned to stand on my own 2 feet. That's when Brandon walked into the showroom. I remember that day so clearly. He was looking at our premium collection, and there was something different about him. He wasn't like the usual rich customers who treated salespeople like we were invisible. He actually talked to me, asked about my day, laughed at my jokes. We connected instantly, and what started as a professional conversation turned into coffee after work. Then coffee turned into dinner. Then dinner turned into late-night phone calls where we'd talk about everything and nothing. For 8 months, Brandon was my whole world. He was sweet, attentive, and he made me feel special. He said he loved how genuine I was, how I wasn't impressed by money or status. He said I was different from everyone he knew. I believed him. God, I really believed him. When he proposed, I cried happy tears. I thought I had finally found my person, someone who would stand by me no matter what. But then came the day he took me to meet his family, the Patterson family. I should have known from the moment I walked into their massive mansion that I didn't belong in their world. His mother, Patricia, looked me up and down like I was something she stepped in. Her eyes were cold, calculating, judging every single thing about me. His father, George, barely acknowledged my presence. He just grunted and went back to his newspaper. Brandon's sister, Melissa, literally laughed when she heard I worked at a car showroom. She said, and I quote, "Oh wow, a car sales girl." How simple. And his brother Kevin? He smirked and said, "So this is the mysterious girlfriend." I expected someone more impressive. That entire evening was torture. Patricia kept making little comments about my clothes, my job, my background. She asked where my parents were, and when I told her I was raised by a single father who I'd lost touch with, she actually smiled. Not a warm smile, a satisfied smile, like she had just confirmed something she suspected. As we were leaving, I heard her tell Brandon, "Over my dead body will my son marry someone so beneath us." I cried the whole drive home. Brandon tried to comfort me. He said they'd come around. He said they just needed time to see how happy we were together. He promised it would get better, and like a fool, I believed him. When his family flat out refused to accept me, Brandon suggested we get married in secret. Just a simple court marriage. He said once we were officially married, his family would have no choice but to accept me. He made it sound romantic, like we were Romeo and Juliet defying the world for love. So we did it. We got married at the courthouse with 2 random witnesses. It was nothing like the wedding I had dreamed of as a little girl, but I told myself love was more important than a fancy ceremony. Brandon promised we'd have a proper celebration once his family came around. I held on to that promise like a lifeline. 3 months later, Brandon finally told his family about our marriage. I wasn't there when he broke the news, but he came home looking shaken. He said his mother screamed, threw things, called me every horrible name you can imagine. His father threatened to disown him. Melissa called me a gold digger who had trapped her brother. Kevin laughed and said, "Bye, you married the help?" But Brandon stood firm. For once, he actually stood up to them. He said I was his wife and they needed to respect that. The family's response? They gave him an ultimatum. I could stay married to their son, but I had to prove I was worthy of the Patterson name. I had to live with them in their house and show them I could fit into their world. Brandon convinced me it was our only option. He said it would just be for a few months until things settled down. He promised he'd protect me. Another promise I should have never believed. Moving into that house was like walking into a prison. From day one, Patricia made it clear what my role would be. I wasn't Brandon's wife. I was their servant. She woke me up at 5 in the morning to prepare breakfast for the entire family. Not just simple breakfast, mind you. Full, elaborate spreads with fresh juice, multiple dishes, everything perfect. If the toast was slightly too dark, she'd make me do it again. If the tea wasn't hot enough, she'd pour it down the sink and tell me to make a fresh pot. I cooked, I cleaned, I served. When they had guests over, Patricia would snap her fingers and say, "Naomi, come here. Our servant needs to clean this." I'll never forget the look on their relatives' faces. Some looked uncomfortable, others just accepted it. One uncle actually asked if I was the new maid, and Patricia, with that cruel smile of hers, said, "Something like that. My son made a mistake, but we're correcting it." Melissa would have her friends over and make me serve them tea and snacks. She'd introduce me saying, "This is technically my sister-in-law, but really, she's just our housekeeper." Her friends would giggle and look at me with pity. Kevin was worse. He'd snap his fingers at me like I was a dog. "Hey, get me water. Hey, iron my shirt. Hey, make yourself useful." Every single day was a new humiliation. And Brandon, my husband who promised to protect me? He'd come home from work, see me exhausted and broken, and just say, "Please, Naomi, just adjust a little more. It'll get better." He never stood up to them. Not really. He'd make weak attempts like, "Mom, please don't be so harsh." But the moment his mother raised her voice, he'd back down. I was completely alone in that house. The physical abuse started 3 months in. I was cleaning the living room when I accidentally knocked over an expensive vase. It shattered on the floor, and before I could even apologize, Patricia slapped me so hard my ear rang. "You clumsy fool," she screamed. "This vase cost more than your entire wardrobe." George just stood there and said, "My wife is right. You need to learn your place." Melissa actually pushed me towards the broken glass and said, "Clean it up with your bare hands. Maybe then you'll be more careful." That night, I showed Brandon the bruises on my arms where Melissa had grabbed me. I showed him the cut on my hand from the broken vase. I begged him to let us move out. And you know what he said? "What do you want me to do, Naomi? They're my family." That's when I realized he would never choose me over them. I was truly on my own. The months that followed were a living nightmare. I lost weight because I was too stressed to eat. I stopped smiling. I barely recognized myself in the mirror. The worst part wasn't even the physical abuse, it was the constant humiliation. Being called worthless, stupid, a burden, being treated like I was nothing, having to serve people who looked at me with disgust. I felt my spirit breaking piece by piece. The final straw came on a Tuesday evening. I had made dinner, and Patricia said the food was too salty. I tried to apologize, but she was beyond reason. She grabbed a wooden spoon and started hitting me with it. On my back, my arms, my shoulders. She was screaming about how useless I was, how I'd ruined her son's life, how I deserved to suffer. George just watched. Melissa recorded it on her phone, laughing. Kevin held my arm so I couldn't defend myself. And Brandon? He came home right as it was happening. He saw his mother beating me, his brother holding me down, his sister laughing, and all he did was weakly say, "Mom, stop. This is too much." That night, lying in bed covered in bruises, I made a decision. I was done. I was done being their punching bag. I was done being treated like garbage. I was done waiting for Brandon to save me. If no one else would stand up for me, I would stand up for myself. The next morning, I told him I was going to the market. Instead, I went straight to the police station. My hands were shaking as I filed the report. Domestic violence and assault charges against Patricia, George, Melissa, and Kevin Patterson. I showed them the bruises, the cuts, the marks all over my body. They took photographs, wrote everything down, and gave me a medical report. Then they told me they'd serve the family with a legal notice. I went back to that house one last time to pack my things. The police arrived just as I was leaving. You should have seen their faces. Patricia went pale, then red with rage. She started screaming, "How dare you! You ungrateful wretch! After everything we've done for you!" George was shouting about lawsuits and connections. Melissa was crying, worried about her reputation. Kevin was yelling at Brandon, asking why he married such a troublemaker. That's when Patricia completely lost control. She lunged at me, grabbed me by the hair, and started slapping me over and over. "You filed a case against US? Against me?" The police had to pull her off me. Even with the officers right there, she couldn't stop herself. George was yelling, "You've made the biggest mistake of your life, girl!" Kevin actually spit at my feet. And Brandon? He just stood there, looking helpless and pathetic. I moved into a tiny rented room that same day. It was barely bigger than a closet, but it was mine. No one there to abuse me, no one to humiliate me, just peace and quiet. Brandon called me constantly, begging me to come back and drop the charges. "You're destroying my family, Naomi. How can you do this to us, to US? Like I was the villain in this story." The Patterson family hired the most expensive lawyers in the city. They started a campaign to destroy my reputation. Melissa posted on social media about gold diggers who marry for money then play victim. Their friends spread rumors that I was mentally unstable, that I was making everything up for attention. People I didn't even know were calling me names online. But I didn't care anymore. I had the truth on my side, and I had evidence. I had those medical reports. I had photographs. I had nothing to lose. The day of the hearing finally arrived. I woke up feeling sick with nerves. I put on a simple yellow dress, the nicest thing I owned, and took the bus to the courthouse. When I arrived, the Patterson family was already there. They had come in expensive cars, dressed like they were going to a fashion show. Patricia wore a cream-colored designer suit that probably cost more than 6 months of my salary. George was in a sharp navy suit. Melissa was dripping in jewelry, scrolling through her phone. Kevin looked smug and confident. And there I was, alone in my simple yellow dress, carrying a folder with all my evidence. We were waiting in the courthouse hallway, and Patricia couldn't help herself. She walked right up to me with that cruel smile on her face. "Look at her," she said loudly, making sure everyone could hear. "The little victim. Came here to cry and get sympathy?" George joined her. "Drop the case now and we'll let you go quietly, otherwise we'll destroy you. You'll have nothing. You'll be nothing." Melissa laughed. "You really think you can win against us? We own people like you." Kevin smirked. "Should have stayed in your lane, car sales girl. Now you're going to regret this." I stood there silently, trying to maintain my dignity. But Patricia couldn't stand being ignored. She moved closer, poking me hard in the shoulder. "You're nothing. You'll always be nothing, just a servant who forgot her place." And then I said something I'd been holding in for months. I looked her straight in the eye and said, "I'm not your servant. I'm a human being who deserves respect." The slap that came next echoed through the entire hallway. Patricia hit me so hard I stumbled backward. My cheek exploded in pain. "How dare you talk back to me?" she screamed. Everyone in the hallway stopped and stared. Some people gasped. A few took out their phones. Security guards came running, and Patricia just kept screaming, "She's a liar and a fraud. She deserves everything she got. Everything." The bailiff was furious. "Ma'am, this is contempt of court. That's assault in a courthouse." But Patricia was beyond reason. She tried to lunge at me again, but the guards held her back. The bailiff ordered everyone into the courtroom immediately. The situation had spiraled completely out of control. We all filed into the courtroom. My cheek was burning and swollen. I could feel it getting bigger by the second. The Patterson family sat on their side with their 3 lawyers, looking confident despite what had just happened. Patricia was still fuming, whispering angrily to her lawyers. I sat alone on my side of the courtroom, trying not to cry. Brandon sat with his family, unable to even look at me. The coward. Then the bailiff's voice rang out, "All rise for the Honorable Judge Andrew Sullivan." Everyone stood up. I heard the door open behind the bench. I looked up and my entire world stopped. Time seemed to freeze, because walking into that courtroom, wearing the black robes of a judge, was a face I hadn't seen in 6 years, a face I had dreamed about, cried about, missed every single day. It was my father. I couldn't breathe. Tears started pouring down my face before I could stop them. My father, my papa, here, now. He was a judge. When did this happen? How did this happen? His eyes scanned the courtroom professionally, and then they landed on me. I saw the exact moment he recognized me. His professional expression cracked, just for a second. His eyes widened, his hands gripped the bench. He saw my swollen cheek. He saw my tears. He saw me broken and alone. And I saw something flash in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years. Protection, love, and anger. He composed himself quickly and said in a steady voice, "Please be seated." Everyone sat down, but I could barely move. My whole body was shaking. Patricia still had no idea who he was. She was whispering to her lawyer, probably planning her defense. Brandon looked confused, wondering why I was reacting so emotionally to the judge. My father, Judge Sullivan, picked up the case file and read through it silently. I could see his jaw clenching as he read the details of what I had endured. The medical reports, the photographs of bruises, the witness statements. His hands were gripping the papers so tightly they were shaking slightly. The Pattersons' lead lawyer stood up confidently. "Your Honor, this is clearly a case of a vindictive daughter-in-law trying to extort money from a respectable family. The Patterson family are pillars of this community, and these accusations are baseless and motivated by greed." I wanted to scream, but my father's voice cut through the air like ice. "I'll decide what this case is about, Counselor. Proceed with your evidence." Over the next 30 minutes, all the evidence was presented. Medical reports showing multiple injuries over several months, photographs of bruises, cuts, marks all over my body, witness statements from neighbors who had heard screaming, a security guard from their building who testified that he'd seen me with injuries multiple times. The Patterson family's lawyer tried to explain everything away, but the evidence was overwhelming. Then my father did something unexpected. He said, "Before we continue with this case, I need to address what occurred in this courthouse hallway 30 minutes ago." My heart started pounding. He asked the bailiff to present any evidence of the hallway incident. Within minutes, they had pulled up phone footage from multiple witnesses. The video played on a screen for the whole courtroom to see. Patricia approaching me, the verbal abuse, her calling me nothing, me trying to stay calm, and then, crystal clear, Patricia slapping me hard across the face. The courtroom was silent as the video ended. My father's face was like stone. He looked directly at Patricia. "Mrs. Patricia Patterson, you committed assault on courthouse property in front of multiple witnesses, including officers of this court." Patricia tried to stand up. "Your Honor, she provoked me with her—" My father's voice was like thunder. "Silence. You will not speak unless I ask you a direct question." I had never seen my father like this. The gentle man who used to make me pancakes on Sunday mornings was gone. This was Judge Sullivan, and he was terrifying. George Patterson stood up angrily. "Your Honor, with all due respect, do you know who I am? We're the Patterson family. We own half the businesses in this city. We have connections. My father cut him off. "Sit down. I don't care if you own the entire city. In this courtroom, you're just another defendant. Your money means nothing here. Your connections mean nothing here. The law is the law, and it applies to everyone equally." Melissa whispered loudly, "This judge is crazy." My father's eyes snapped to her. "Young lady, one more word and you'll join your mother in contempt charges." Kevin smirked and muttered, "This is a joke." My father didn't even hesitate. "Bailiff, if that young man speaks again, remove him from my courtroom." Kevin's smirk disappeared instantly. Brandon looked absolutely terrified, finally realizing this wasn't going to end the way his family expected. Then my father did something that changed everything. He looked directly at me and said, "The plaintiff will approach the bench." My legs were shaking so badly I could barely walk. I stood in front of him, and it took everything in me not to completely break down. He spoke softly, with more emotion than a judge probably should show. "Please state your full name for the record." My voice came out as a whisper. Naomi Sullivan, Your Honor." The courtroom erupted. People started whispering, the same last name. Patricia's face went completely white. George looked like he might pass out. Melissa dropped her phone. Kevin's mouth hung open. My father continued, "And can you tell the court about your family background?" Tears were streaming down my face. I was raised by a single father, a father who worked hard to give me everything I needed, a father I lost contact with 6 years ago due to circumstances beyond our control, a father who I thought had forgotten about me, a father who I missed every single day. My father removed his glasses, and I could see tears in his eyes too. "For the record," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "the plaintiff, Naomi Sullivan, is my daughter." Complete chaos erupted in the courtroom. Patricia looked like she was going to be sick. The color had drained from her face completely. George was gripping the table in front of him. Melissa was crying. Kevin looked panicked. And Brandon? Brandon finally understood the magnitude of what his family had done. My father took a moment to compose himself, then continued in his judge voice. "I have spent 6 years searching for my daughter. I became a judge, thinking that maybe, somehow, I could use my position to find her. I hired investigators. I checked every database. Every day I wondered where she was, if she was safe, if she was happy. And today, I find her in my courtroom, bruised, broken, abused. Because a family who believed their wealth placed them above basic human decency decided to torture her." He looked at each member of the Patterson family. "You treated my daughter like a servant. You beat her. You humiliated her. You broke her spirit. And why? Because she wasn't born into wealth? Because she worked an honest job? Because she dared to love your son?" The courtroom was completely silent. You could hear a pin drop. My father continued, "I will recuse myself from the main domestic violence case to ensure a fair trial. Another judge will handle those charges. But the assault that occurred in this courthouse today, in my jurisdiction, witnessed by officers of this court, that falls under my immediate authority." He looked directly at Patricia. "Mrs. Patricia Patterson, you are hereby held in contempt of court. You committed assault on courthouse property. You will face criminal charges for this act. Bail is set at $50,000. Patricia tried to speak, but her lawyer grabbed her arm to stop her. My father wasn't done. "Furthermore, I am issuing an immediate restraining order. Patricia Patterson, George Patterson, Melissa Patterson, and Kevin Patterson are ordered to stay 500 feet away from Naomi Sullivan at all times. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." George jumped up. "This is personal bias. You can't do this." My father's voice was calm but firm. "No, Mr. Patterson. This is the law that applies to everyone regardless of their bank account. You believed your money made you untouchable. You were wrong." He addressed the entire family now. "You are wealthy people who have never faced consequences for your actions. You've bought your way out of problems, used your connections to avoid accountability. But not today. Not in my courtroom. My daughter showed more courage in filing this case than any of you have shown in your entire privileged lives." Then he looked at Brandon, and his voice filled with contempt. "And you, young man, you watched your wife suffer. You stood by while your family tortured her. You chose comfort over courage, silence over standing up for what's right. You're the worst kind of coward. You don't deserve her. You never did." Brandon couldn't even lift his head. He just stared at the floor, shame radiating off him. My father straightened up. "This court is adjourned. The main case will be transferred to Judge Martinez. Bailiff, take Mrs. Patricia Patterson into custody until bail is posted." 2 officers moved toward Patricia. She started crying, her makeup running down her face. "Please, Your Honor." I'm sorry. I didn't know. My father interrupted her. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught. There's a difference. Officers, proceed. I watched as Patricia Patterson, the woman who had made my life hell for months, was led away in handcuffs. She was crying, pleading, her designer suit and perfect hair now a mess. George looked shell-shocked. Melissa was sobbing. Kevin was pale and silent. Their expensive lawyers were gathering papers frantically, probably already calculating how much this was going to cost them. And Brandon? He just sat there, the weight of his family's cruelty and his own cowardice finally crushing him. After the courtroom cleared, I stood outside in the hallway, completely overwhelmed. My father came out, no longer wearing his judge's robes. Just my papa. Just the man who used to read me bedtime stories and teach me to ride a bike. We looked at each other for a long moment, and then we both moved at the same time. He wrapped his arms around me, and I buried my face in his shoulder and sobbed. All the pain, all the abuse, all the loneliness of the past months came pouring out. I never stopped looking for you, Beta, he whispered. Not for a single day. I'm so sorry it took so long to find you. I couldn't even speak. I just held on to him and cried. I'm so proud of you, he said. You stood up for yourself. You fought back. You're so much stronger than you know. We stood there for a long time, just holding each other. Then I heard footsteps. Brandon approached hesitantly. Naomi, I didn't know he was your father. I'm so sorry. For everything. For all of it. Please, can we talk? Can we try to fix this? I pulled away from my father and looked at Brandon, really looked at him. This man who I had loved so much, this man who had promised to protect me and failed at every turn. You knew I was suffering, Brandon. You watched your mother hit me. You heard your sister insult me. You saw your brother treat me like dirt. And you chose them. Every single time, you chose them over me. He started crying. I was weak. I know I was, but I love you. We can start over. We can move away from my family. Please. I shook my head. Love isn't just words, Brandon. Love is action. Love is protection. Love is standing up for the person you claim to care about. You showed me what your love is worth. It's worth nothing. He tried to reach for my hand, but my father stepped between us. The lady has made herself clear. I suggest you leave before I have you removed for violating the restraining order. Brandon looked at both of us, realized he had no power here, and walked away. I watched him go and felt nothing. No sadness, no regret, just relief. Over the next few weeks, everything changed. Patricia faced criminal charges for both assaults. George's business reputation took a massive hit when word spread about how they treated their daughter-in-law. Melissa's social media posts backfired spectacularly when people dug them up and called her out for her cruelty. Kevin lost several business deals because nobody wanted to associate with the Patterson name anymore. The family who had everything, who thought they were untouchable, watched their perfect world crumble. Money couldn't buy them out of this one. I moved in with my father temporarily while I got back on my feet. We spent hours catching up on the 6 years we'd lost. He explained how his remarriage had fallen apart, how he'd thrown himself into law school and becoming a judge, how he'd used every resource available to search for me. I told him everything about Brandon, about the abuse, about how alone I felt. We cried together, laughed together, healed together. I filed for divorce, and Brandon didn't contest it. I think he knew he had no leg to stand on. The divorce was finalized within 3 months. I started therapy to deal with the trauma of what I'd endured. My father supported me through every session, every hard day, every moment when I doubted myself. Slowly, piece by piece, I started feeling like myself again. The confident woman who had walked into that car showroom years ago started to emerge from the shell of the beaten-down girl the Patterson family had tried to create. Eventually, I started my own small business as a car consultant. I used my knowledge and experience to help people find the right vehicles for their needs. It wasn't much at first, but it was mine. Built on my own terms, with my own rules. No one to call me a servant, no one to make me feel small, Just me, doing what I loved and was good at. My father was so proud. He told everyone about his daughter, the businesswoman. He'd brag to his colleagues, show them my business cards, and beam with pride. So that's my story. My in-laws tortured me, called me their servant, beat me in front of everyone. My mother-in-law even slapped me inside the courthouse thinking she was untouchable. But the judge who walked in was my own father, and karma served justice on a silver platter. If this story moved you, if you've ever felt small or powerless, drop a comment and share your thoughts. Hit that like button if you believe in justice and karma. And subscribe to this channel because I share real stories of real people who fought back and won. Remember, no amount of money, power, or status gives anyone the right to treat you like you're less than human. Stand up for yourself. Your voice matters. Your dignity matters. You matter. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong, everyone.